Hello, it's George from Australia, and welcome to Gaming My Whole Life, where I discuss everything video game related, from the good old pixels graphics to the birth of 3D till now. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be discussing Baldurs Gate Dark Alliance that came out in 2001. It originally launched on the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox One. Now, before we do proceed any further, just a friendly reminder, if you were new here, please consider subscribing to support a YouTuber such as myself. I upload regular content covering everything you can imagine, and most importantly, I do not chase hate trends and doing all that negative stuff. So if you're like a YouTuber who's just passionate about his craft, just wants to talk about games and isn't going to keep chasing the most dramatic headlines you can think of just to trick you into watching videos, then subscribe, make a point, show it to YouTube, support the algorithm, let them know you like people like me who just want to talk games. With that being said, let's continue. Number 1. Okay, let's do the easiest one straight off the bat. If you simply look at Baldurs Gate 2, that came out 1 year beforehand. I'll put a screenshot, I'll put a side-by-side comparison, I'll do something visually easy and appealing for you. You look at Baldurs Gate 2, it had some improvements over Baldurs Gate 1, but that was the general standard for Baldurs Gates. It was very pixelized, it was pretty much nothing was real time. It was, it was what you got. Not hating on it, but that was the visual standard. And then only 1 year later to get full 3D. We're not talking about pixels, we're talking about physics, we're talking about lighting, we're talking about really rounded edges and a movable camera and this and that. Straight off the bat, you knew this was the premium experience. But let's get into the specifics, which is the real juicy parts. Number 2. Alrighty, let's talk physics. Physics itself was actually really exciting and something we really didn't see. So the previous generation, which was the glorious PlayStation 1 and glorious Nintendo 64, we didn't actually have proper physics in our games. We had pre-scripted animation, so then whenever you made something explode and things went everywhere, that was handcrafted explosions, right? They had animators in there, every single part would go in the predefined area. So physics is when things can literally have its own weight and value, right? So then explosions aren't all the same. And they went really hard on this during the PS2 era because it was new, it was exciting and good on them. And Baldurs Gate Dark Alliance was no exception, and it really added value to the game. So being able to make the initial barrels you come across explode and go and flying everywhere. And it wasn't isolated to that. When you made enemies explode, right? If you managed to throw a big spell or something, made an enemy go flying, you would actually see their body going flying. When you killed an enemy, their shield would normally go flying, their sword would go flying, their limbs, their heads. It was all so smooth and it really added to the experience. See, in Baldurs Gate, you spend a lot of time killing the same enemies over and over and over again, right? Like there's some serious grind. If you get introduced to a new enemy type, expect to kill literally 20 to 30 of them, I counted, in a row before you start getting some variations, right? Now, in the old days, every time you killed an enemy, they would have had the exact same death animation every time. So if you can imagine seeing a goblin fall over the exact same way 30 times in a row, it's going to start getting boring. But the introduction of physics in the game meant the bodies would go flying, the limbs, the shields, the swords, the barrels, everything, right? And it made it so that each death was unique. Speaking of physics, Baldurs Gate Dark Alliance actually had the most advanced water physics we had actually seen in a video game ever. And I've spoken about it before when I did my evolution of water graphics in video games. Actually, screw it, I'll put a little thumbnail here, very popular video. If you want to hear my opinions on, the evolution of water graphics with video games, great video, very passionate about it, I have a link below. But one thing I mentioned in that video, which is from Baldurs Gate, was the fact that you could go in the water, you could jump in there, and it would literally make splashes. You could run around circle, create waves, the waves bounce to each other back and forth. You have to keep in mind, we came from an era where water graphics was pretty much a transparent box. It was like literally just a blue transparent box. Maybe they would paint some fake waves on the top. It never moved, it very rarely did. And this was interactive. So having interactive enemy corpses and explosions and water all together was just wow. And they did even more. But the impressive technical feats do not end there, so stick around. Number 3. So another really impressive feat that the game managed to pull off flawlessly, right, is despite all the advanced things the game is already doing, in video games, even today, so we can even make that comparison, it is very typical that when you kill an enemy, the body normally disappears, right? Because when an enemy dies and then the corpse falls on the ground, that's taking up resources, that's taking up memory. So a developer hack is always figuring out how to get rid of the bodies, right? Because if the bodies stay there, then the game has to hold that extra memory for it instead of dedicating it elsewhere. Baldurs Gate Dark Alliance, talk about like flex, they didn't care. Every single body, no exaggeration, that you've killed ever sticks around indefinitely, right? Let that sink in. While you play this game, you are literally killing hundreds of goblins and all these different enemies and so forth, right? And their bodies fall to the ground. During a match, there is blood splattering everywhere. Their shield goes to the left, their sword or axe goes flying behind them. You chop off a limb, the arm goes flying, that takes up a separate spot. The head goes into another direction. It is a whole thing, right? You can go into a room often and just slaughter everyone, 20, 30 enemies, corpses everywhere, each with their own physics and decapitations and blood and this and that. All those bodies that litter the floor stay there forever. So it is just amazing that not only were they pushing, you know, the cutting edge physics and this and that, but also all the bodies stuck around, which really add to it, because whenever you're backtracking and you see like a mountain of bodies, one, it lets you know, hey, I've already been here, and two, it reminds you of your adventurous journey of like, oh wow, I did that, right? Like I really fought hard. This was a really difficult room. Look at the literal pile of bodies. If you're still with me at this point, thank you very much. Be sure to hit the like button. Obviously you're enjoying your time here, and please do consider subscribing if you were new. Really helps me, really encourages the algorithm, and encourages me to continue producing positive original content. But let's continue. Number 4. Alrighty then, my smexy gamers, we need to talk about lighting. Lighting in Baldurs Gate Dark Alliance just works really nice. The shadows are nice and soft. Everything glows. Fire sources have a glow to it. You know, it has a bit of a glare effect. The vibrance of the colors is wonderful. If you use a spell, it just lights up the whole room. Lighting affects you and enemies and the environment. The most impressive showing of this, in my opinion, is when you're using a fire spell. So you have that original fire spell that you get as the sorcerer, where flames literally burst out of your hands. Very cool. If you use that spell, particularly in the dark area, the immediate area will get lit. Your character will get lit, as well as any other enemies as well. So that's just all done very nicely. But to flex their genius muscles even more, I reckon the developers were on a mission to make a point of like such a gorgeous game. To flex even further, remember how previously I mentioned that the bodies, the corpses, or the damage you do to the environment, none of that goes away? Well, even those many bodies are affected by lighting impressively enough. So when the character runs around, even if you don't use a lighting spell or whatever, there is a default, you know, little circular light that sort of follows the character, right? Because, you know, you want to see where you're going. If you literally just run in a circle around an enemy corpse or through the corpses, the lighting actually lights up all those dead bodies that are on the ground. So they're not just, you know, empty husks where like just wizardry, the actual body isn't there. The bodies are there. The lighting affects the mountain of corpses around you, and each weapon limb is just very well done. Number 5. And you know the best part of this, despite all the advanced lighting, despite the fact it's in full 3D, despite the fact that you have the shadows and the glowing and the many physics and the bodies that don't disappear and this and that, even with all of this, there is no lag in this game. The frame rate is buttery smooth, which is so impressive. To have that many enemies at you, spells, this and that happening, the game never chugs or slows down. And even more so is that you can play this game co-op multiplayer, so you can be doubling the action. You know, you can be throwing spells, they can be just chopping off heads, chaos going on. Everything is really smooth, and this is during a time period where most people still didn't actually care about frame rate and this and that. So the fact that this game even had good performance was really good. But what it also tells us, shockingly enough, is that even with all the impressive smexy bells and whistles that they've added that I've been talking up during this, it means that they could have pushed things even further, right? If they were willing to sacrifice a little bit of frame rate, a little bit of chugginess here and there, they could have made this game look even better. So the fact that they brought all that magic out with room to spare, just wow. Now, I have uploaded a lot of videos, so I like to be very organized. I have dedicated playlists for whatever your interest may need. So if you enjoyed today's video, this is a retro game, right? I talk about PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 game, Nintendo 64, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega. I talk about a lot of this old school, right? So feel free to go through that playlist. You'll find more content similar to this. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with me. You have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you all live on this big blue planet of ours. God bless you all. Take care. And I'll see you for the next video here. Gaming My Whole Life. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. I appreciate every single one of you. See you all next time. Bye-bye.